Right, so we're going deep on this one, folks. We're diving into Joker. Folie Deux.
The sequel nobody saw coming.
Right. Nobody expected a sequel, let alone...
A musical?
We're looking at a review by Glenn Kenny from Roger Ebert's website, published October 3rd.
Very recently.
Yeah, just last month, 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fascinating read, this review, even if you haven't seen the first Joker.
Right.
It really gets into this bigger ideas about art, like where's the line, entertainment, our fascination with the dark side of things, you know?
Yeah, and it's especially interesting, I think, given Kenny's history with the first Joker film.
Oh, yeah. He had
a pretty strong reaction.
strong negative reaction,
Yeah.
particularly to the ending.
The climax of the film, that scene where Joker murders the talk show host on live television.
That one really bothered me.
It did, and it seems like, part of that stems from the fact that Kenny actually witnessed
Oh, wow.
the unedited footage of R. Bud Dwyer's suicide.
Oh, right.
So that experience obviously left a very deep impression on him.
I can only imagine.
And he saw a disturbing parallel in the film's climax.
So he called it out.
He called it out, yeah. He used the phrase opportunistic nihilism.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It is. It's juicy. Basically accusing the filmmakers of exploiting a real tragedy for shock value.
Wow. So safe to say he wasn't a huge fan of that first one, and now
They're hitting us with a musical.
a musical sequel?
The Folie Deux.
Right, which literally means...
Shared delusion.
Yeah, shared psychosis.
Psychosis. Mm-hmm.
So even the title is hinting at, something psychologically complex.
Right, and layered.
Yeah, but a musical.
Who would have predicted that?
Right. I mean, I get that Joker's mental state is unique, but does that translate to, like, bursting into song,
Well, and they're using, like, existing popular songs.
Oh, really? Like what?
Bewitched, bothered, and bewildered.
Okay.
To love somebody, even.
Wow. See, that's what I mean. Like, does the music actually...
serve the story?
Serve the story.
Yeah, is it effective?
Yeah.
And Kenny's answer, basically, is no.
Hard no.
He found the film incoherent. Narratively, psychologically, and aesthetically.
Okay, so wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Do musicals, like, get a pass when it comes to things like a really tight plot or,
That's a good question.
Because it's like they're operating on this whole other level of reality.
It's heightened,
Yeah.
where emotions are expressed through song and dance,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there is an element of that. I think we often give musicals more leeway.
Right.
Because we just accept that they're not trying to be completely realistic.
Right.
But even within musicals, there are degrees of coherence.
Sure.
Right? Like some musicals have a really tight plot.
Totally.
Others are more, kind of loose and episodic.
Yeah.
And Kenny seems to be saying that Folie Deux falls short.
Well, he doesn't even meet those looser standards.
Yeah, it's like the filmmakers couldn't decide what they wanted to be.
Okay, so unpack this incoherence for me. Like, what specifically is so off about it?
Well, he doesn't give a ton of specifics, but he suggests that the plot, the character development, even the visual style, all feel disconnected.
Like they're not part of the same movie.
Yeah, like they're from different movies almost.
So it's like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yes.
Where the pieces are from 5 different pictures.
Exactly, and then you put music to that.
Right, and it makes you wonder, how does the musical format itself then impact the whole viewing experience? Especially with a story as dark as Joker,
That's a really good point. I mean, because on the one hand, music can be so powerful.
Oh, for sure.
For conveying emotion, even really disturbing ones. But
right.
But wouldn't the theatricality of a musical maybe create a distance between the audience?
Oh, interesting.
And these very raw, unsettling characters.
That's a good point. Because Joker's all about chaos, breaking down those barriers, right? But a musical might, like, work against that.
In a way.
By putting this layer of performance
yeah.
between us and the story.
Right, like we're watching a show instead of peering into the abyss.
Okay, so let's bring us back down to earth for a second.
Okay.
What is the actual story in Folie Deux?
Okay.
Where do we find Arthur Fleck this time around?
So the film picks up right after the first one.
Okay.
Arthur is fully embracing the Joker persona now.
Oh.
He's locked up in Arkham Asylum.
Makes sense.
And here's where things get really interesting. He meets Lady Gaga's character.
Okay.
Lee Quinzel.
Wait, she's not Harley Quinn yet.
Not quite.
Interesting.
And their relationship becomes central to the film.
Okay.
The romance plays out against the backdrop of Joker's trial for his crimes.
Right.
And his descent into even deeper madness.
Of course.
Kenny mentions a scene where Joker even pretends to be a Southern lawyer.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
A Southern lawyer?
It's pretty bizarre.
In the middle of all this darkness and psychological drama?
Yeah, it's almost like they were trying to inject some weird humor into this incredibly grim story.
Yeah. Almost like they couldn't decide if they wanted to double down on the grim tone of the first one.
Yes.
Or try something totally different.
Right, and that inconsistency seems to be
a big part of what Kenny's reacting to.
A big part of it, yeah. He even goes so far as to say the idea of Joker fan service.
Oh, okay.
Is kind of disturbing.
Given the character's nature.
Given the character's very violent nature. He even compares it to Charles Manson fan service.
Whoa.
Which is a pretty loaded statement.
That's a comparison.
Yeah.
That needs some unpacking.
It does.
Why would he go there?
Well, it seems like he's trying to force us to confront this uncomfortable truth.
Okay.
That we often find ourselves fascinated by things that are dark, even morally reprehensible.
Right.
And Kenny seems to be suggesting that this fascination isn't always healthy or harmless.
Yeah, I get that. We love our anti-heroes, our complex villains.
Right.
But where's the line? Can you enjoy a film like this purely for its artistic merit? Or are you somehow condoning the character's actions by watching it?
That is the question.
Right.
It's a tough question, and I think Kenny is challenging us to think about it.
Yeah.
He's basically saying, hey, look at what you're drawn to.
What does that say about you?
Exactly.
And all of this is coming from a critic who was so deeply affected by a real-life tragedy.
Right.
That mirrored a scene in the first film.
Right, so it's not...
It makes his critique...
It makes his critique of Joker fan service.
It'd be even more powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got a musical sequel to a dark and controversial film, a critic with a deeply personal connection to this material.
Yeah.
And a whole lot of questions about art, fandom, and like the ethics of entertainment.
It's a lot.
Where do we even go from here?
Well, let's dive into Kenny's take on the performances.
Okay.
Because even in the midst of all this chaos, there are some bright spots, according to him.
Okay. So tell me, did Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix at least nail their roles?
That seems to be the one thing Kenny and I agree on, but even those performances raise some interesting questions.
Oh. Okay, so spill the tea. What do we got?
Kenny praises both Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix, saying they fully commit to their roles, which is no surprise given their talent.
Right.
He even highlights the different singing styles they use.
Oh, interesting.
Like more traditional musical theater vocals for the fantasy sequences.
Okay.
And something a little, let's say, more Joker-esque for the real world scenes.
Okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're really playing with those expectations.
They are?
But I thought you said even the performances raised some questions.
Yeah, there's this one line in the review that really jumped out at me.
Yeah.
Where Kenny accuses Phoenix of slipping into, how does he put it, narcissistic exhibitionism.
Ooh.
Particularly in his portrayal of Joker's dance movements.
Ouch.
Yeah, that's got a sting coming from a critic like Kenny.
Especially from him, yeah.
What is he getting at with that critique?
Yeah, what do you think?
It seems like Kenny's grappling with this idea of an actor disappearing into a role so completely.
Yeah.
Especially a role as dark and disturbing as the Joker.
Right, right.
And he's asking, is there a point where it becomes less about the art and more about the actor's ego?
That's a good point.
Yeah, and it ties back to Kenny's comparison of Joker fan service.
Right.
To Charles Manson fan service.
Right.
It's like he's asking, how much of our fascination with the Joker is about the character?
Yeah.
And how much of it is about the performance, about Joaquin Phoenix himself?
That's a good question.
It is. It's a really provocative comparison to Manson.
It is, yeah.
He's not just critiquing a film.
He's critiquing art.
He's forcing us to confront our own cultural obsessions.
Right, right.
It's like he's saying, look, we're drawn to darkness, to these figures who represent chaos and rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
But where does that fascination cross the line into something more dangerous, more unhealthy?
It's a powerful statement.
It is.
And it really gets you thinking about the responsibility of artists.
Right.
Especially when they're dealing with material that can be so easily misinterpreted or even glorified.
Right. If we're celebrating Joker fan service, Are we inadvertently celebrating the darkness that the character represents?
Yeah.
Is there a point where we need to step back and examine why we're so drawn to these figures?
It sounds like Kenny's saying there is.
He's suggesting that
Yeah.
he's not shying away from that fact that he was so deeply affected by that real-life tragedy
Right.
that inspired a scene in the first Joker film.
Right.
And that experience clearly informs his whole critique of the sequel.
Yeah. It makes you wonder how much responsibility DO artists have when they draw inspiration from real-world events, especially ones as traumatic as Art Bud Dwyer's suicide.
Right.
Is it ever okay to use real-life suffering for artistic purposes?
That's the question.
That's a huge question, and I'm not sure there's a simple answer.
There's not.
But I think it's a conversation worth having, especially now.
Especially
when we're constantly bombarded with images and stories that blur the line between fact and fiction.
Absolutely. I think that's what makes Kenny's review so valuable.
It's forcing us to think about it.
He's not afraid to ask those tough questions, even if it makes us uncomfortable.
Right, and that's what good art should do.
Exactly.
Right. Make us think, make us feel, make us challenge our own assumptions.
Challenge those assumptions, yeah.
This whole deep dive has been like that, I feel like.
It has.
We started with a movie review, and now we're talking about the nature of art.
Right.
The ethics of storytelling, and our own fascination with that dark side.
Exactly. It just goes to show that sometimes the most interesting conversations come from these unexpected places.
Yeah.
And sometimes the most powerful art is the kind that makes us squirm a little bit.
So to our listeners who are now like, okay, I need to see this movie.
Yes.
What's the one thing they should keep in mind?
Go in with an open mind.
Open mind.
But also a critical eye.
Critical eye, yeah.
Don't be afraid to be challenged, to be disturbed even, right?
And remember, your interpretation of the film might be completely different from Glenn Kenny's.
Right.
Or even ours.
Or even ours, exactly. And that's okay. The best art sparks debate, encourages different perspectives,
Right.
and stays with you long after the credits roll.
Right.
So dive in, explore those dark corners.
Go for it.
And then come back and tell us what you think.
Let us know.
Because I'm curious.
I am too. This has been a fascinating deep dive into Joker, Folie, Deux.
It really has.
And all the complex issues that it raises.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Connect with us on social media.
Let the conversation continue.
Let's keep talking about this.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Right. It's a lot, but...
It is, but it's good stuff.
It's good stuff.
It's thought-provoking.
Thought-provoking.
It's what we need.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for today.
That's it for today, yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
And we'll see you next time. See you next time for another deep dive.
Bye.
Bye. So, yeah, I mean, Kenny praises both Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix.
Okay.
He says they really commit to their roles.
Which isn't really a surprise.
Not with those two. Like, he points out how they even use different singing styles.
Oh, really?
Yeah, more traditional musical theater vocals for those fantasy sequences.
Right.
And then something more, let's say, Joker-esque.
Uh-huh.
For those real-world scenes.
Okay, so they're really playing with our expectations there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But
you said even those performances raise some questions.
Yeah, there's this one line in the review where Kenny accuses Phoenix of slipping into narcissistic exhibitionism.
Oh, wow.
Especially in, like, his portrayal of Joker's dance movements.
Ouch.
Yeah, I mean, coming from a critic like Kenny.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
What do you think he's getting at with that?
It seems like he's grappling with this idea of an actor disappearing into a role.
Mm-hmm.
So completely, especially a role as dark as Joker. And maybe there's a point where it becomes less about the art itself.
And more about the actor.
Yeah, the actor's ego, almost.
Which again ties back to that whole Joker fan service thing.
Right, right.
It's almost like how much of our fascination with this character is about the character itself.
And how much is it about?
And how much is about the performance?
The performance. Joaquin Phoenix.
Right, exactly. And, you know, that comparison to Charles Manson, it's so provocative.
It really is.
He's not just, you know, like I said, he's not just reviewing the movie.
He's making us think about.
He's forcing us to look at our own obsessions, our own culture.
Our fascination with these.
With darkness, with figures who represent chaos and rebellion.
Where's that line, though?
That's the question, isn't it?
Right.
Where does that healthy fascination become something more dangerous?
It's a powerful statement to make.
Oh, it is.
Especially coming from someone who had such a visceral reaction to the first film
because of that real-life tragedy.
It just makes you think about the artist's responsibility even more.
Absolutely.
Especially when they're dealing with these topics.
Because if we're celebrating this Joker fan service,
right,
are we also kind of, I don't know, celebrating that darkness?
The things that the character represents.
Exactly. And I think Kenny's saying that at some point we need to examine why we're so drawn to these figures.
And it seems like Kenny's arguing there is a point where we need to step back.
He's not shying away from that.
No. And given his own experience with that tragedy, it makes it even more impactful.
It really does. It makes you wonder how much responsibility artists DO have.
When they pull from reality.
When they take inspiration from real-life events.
Like especially events that are so traumatic.
Like our Bud Dwyer's suicide. I mean, is it ever okay to use real-life suffering?
For entertainment.
For art? For entertainment? It's a huge question.
That's a question we all have to grapple with.
There's no easy answer.
No, but Kenny's review is forcing us to have that conversation.
It is, and that's what makes it so valuable.
Even if it's uncomfortable?
Even if it makes us squirm a little bit. Because good art, I think...
It should challenge us.
It should make us think. Make us feel.
Make us question.
Challenge those assumptions. This whole deep dive has been like that.
It really has.
Started with a movie review, and now we're talking about the nature of art.
The ethics of storytelling.
Yeah, and our own fascination with darkness and violence.
It's crazy how we got here.
But that's what's so fascinating about this, right?
It's true. Sometimes the most interesting conversations come from these totally unexpected places.
And sometimes the most powerful art is the kind that makes us a little uncomfortable.
So for our listeners who are thinking, okay, I have to see this movie now.
Yeah.
What's the one thing they should keep in mind going in?
Go in with an open mind.
Open mind.
But a critical eye.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to be challenged.
Question it.
Even disturbed. And remember, your interpretation
might
be completely different from Kenny's.
Totally.
Or ours.
Even ours. That's okay.
That's okay. The best art does that.
It makes you think.
It sparks debate.
Yeah.
It encourages different perspectives, makes you think about it even after the movie's over.
Yeah. So dive in, explore those dark corners.
See what you find.
And then come back and tell us what you thought.
Yeah, we want to know.
Because I'm curious too.
I am too. This has been a really interesting look at Joker, Folie, Deux.
It really has.
And all these complex questions it raises.
We'd love to hear your thoughts, so connect to this.
On social media, let's keep the conversation going.
You know, it's wild how Kenny's own experience with that real-life tragedy just bleeds into, like, his whole take on the film.
It's more than just a movie review at that point, right?
Totally.
It's a guy grappling with these real consequences.
The violence and how it shows up.
Yeah, and how it's reflected in art.
And it just makes that opportunistic nihilism line, like...
Oh, so much more powerful.
It hits so much harder because...
Not just an academic exercise.
Yeah, it's not just...
He's speaking from a place of real understanding.
Pain, even.
Yeah, and it challenges us to really consider, like, the ethics of all of it.
When does inspiration become exploitation?
Where's that line?
Yeah, like, is it ever okay?
He used someone else's suffering.
For art.
Yeah, for entertainment.
It's a heavy question.
It's a big one. And I don't know if there is an easy answer.
I don't think there is.
But I think it's something we have to talk about.
Especially
now. Especially now when we're, like...
bombarded with these images.
Yeah, and these narratives.
That blur those lines.
Between reality and... Fiction, yeah. And I think that's where Kenny's review is just so valuable.
He's not afraid to ask the tough questions.
Even if it makes us uncomfortable.
Which, honestly, is what good art should do.
It should make us think.
It should make us feel things, make us challenge those assumptions we have.
It's funny how this whole deep dive has been like that.
It really has.
Yeah.
Started with a movie review, and now we're talking about, like, the nature of art itself.
The ethics of storytelling.
And our own fascination with the darkness.
It's kind of amazing how we got here.
It is.
Yeah.
It just goes to show sometimes those really interesting conversations come from these totally unexpected places.
Yeah, and sometimes the best art is the kind that makes you a little uncomfortable.
Makes you squirm in your seat.
A little bit, yeah.
So to our listeners who are now saying, like, okay, I have to see this movie now.
Yeah.
What would you tell them?
Go into it with an open mind.
Okay.
But be critical, too, you know? Yeah. Don't be afraid to be challenged, to be disturbed, even.
Yeah.
And remember, your interpretation of the film, it might be different from Kenny's.
It might be different from ours.
Exactly. And that's okay.
The best art, it sparks those debates.
It encourages those different viewpoints.
And it sticks with you, like...
long after the credits have rolled.
So yeah, dive in, folks. Explore those dark corners.
And let us know what you think.
We want to know. I want to know.
This has been a wild ride.
It really has.
A deep dive into Joker, Folie, Deux, and all the complex issues it brings up.
We'd love to hear your thoughts, so connect with us on social media, and let's keep this conversation going.
Keep talking about this. This is important stuff.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Bye.
Bye.